Welcome to Delivering Miracles, a podcast to teach women like you tips and strategies on how you can have a safer pregnancy so you can bring home a healthy baby. I'm your host and your high-risk pregnancy expert, Parijat Deshpande. I can't wait to chat with you. I remember my first visit to my reproductive endocrinologist. It actually took me several weeks to commit to making that appointment because there was something about his picture on the website that made me go, do I want to see him or not? I don't know. He's my friend now. We're friends now. And he's a wonderful, wonderful man. I think it was more just this idea that, oh my gosh, I'm seeing the specialist for fertility. And I'd already gone into this appointment knowing that we had so many issues to deal with. And we had so many things that were already on our plate and we were only in our 20s. So there was just a sense of overwhelm going in anyway. And I remember sitting there with him in his office and him going through his PowerPoint presentation, which you've heard me say several times how much I love that. And that's really what hooked me in. I went, okay, you're totally my doctor. But he was going through the PowerPoint presentation, the education piece of what our bodies are supposed to do versus what he believes my body's actually doing was very, from an intellectual perspective and a learning perspective, I thought was very interesting. But then he started talking about what I had in store for me in terms of his recommended treatment protocol. Where do we begin? What's the next step? Because trying for 6 months or a year just on our own was not an option for us. And I heard all the names of the different hormones and all the different medications and all the different injections and pills. And we had to get a calendar. And I gotta be honest, I almost stopped breathing for a second because it felt really overwhelming. I mean, it was the first time that it became extremely clear to me that we cannot have children on our own. That the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, really was switched on its head for us. And it became, it takes a village to make a child for us. That if we really, really wanted a biological child, this was not going to be easy. And it was going to involve a lot of appointments and a lot of medication and a lot of people in the process. It was a hard decision. And I remember sitting there with my husband thinking about, is this the right option for us? Is this the right thing to do? How do you know that that's the right thing to do? And just because it's right for my neighbor, does that mean it's right for me? If it's right for my husband, does it mean it's right for me? It's so many questions, and it's a ton of loaded questions that don't have an easy answer. And I know from doing this podcast and being out there and being connected with so many women in the community like you, these are questions you're grappling with too. And that's why I'm so, so excited to have Emylee Williams on today to share her experience of growing her family and how she handled these really difficult questions on what options she had to be able to become a parent. Emylee is a creative entrepreneur, an artist, and an adoptive mom. And as the co-founder of Think Creative Collective, she works exclusively with female creative entrepreneurs from all over the world, helping them turn their hobbies into freaking profitable businesses. Yes, I love it. When she's not kicking butt online, because she totally is, you can find her elbow deep in paints, cuddling her puppies, or having dance parties with her baby girl, who is seriously the cutest baby I have seen in a very, 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 very long time. She's adorable. Welcome, Emylee. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're going to have such an amazing conversation. I know it already. And I'm so excited to just jump in and talk about all this because this is a lot.
Yeah,
this is
heavy.
A lot. It's heavy. It's big stuff.
I might cry.
That is totally okay. We are all open about that here. I have done that several times on this podcast myself, so it's all good. So tell us, Emylee, tell us a little bit about your story and where does it begin?
Well, I think it's funny to start truly where it begins with the fact that I never wanted to have kids in the first place. I was an only child and raised by a single mom who was raised by a single mom who was raised by a single mom. And I come I come from a long line of very strong, independent women who try to take over the world, right? And it was instilled in me from a very young age that you have to work hard and only worry about yourself because no one else will. And so what that led to was a very selfish, moody, emotional child. And I always thought that motherhood was not for me, that I couldn't put those selfish tendencies aside, that I couldn't care for another human being, that I didn't really want to. I was never the nurturing child. I never babysat, never connected with kids. And I just thought that part of life and being an adult wouldn't be for me. And I was fine with it for the longest until I saw my husband reading a book, or my boyfriend at the time, now husband, reading a book to his nephew at a Thanksgiving holiday, and my ovaries exploded.
Oh.
And something changed in me over, the course of growing up and being with him and just being an adult and changing and growing, that I thought, okay, maybe that's for us. But it was always one of those things, even early on in our relationship, where we talked about that it might not be, that we might both not want kids, and we might just travel and grow businesses and do all of these other things, and that wasn't going to be for us. So I think for a while, we used that as an excuse to not worry about why we weren't getting pregnant.
Sure. Yeah, sure. It's so much easier than looking into it and figuring it out sometimes.
Oh, yeah. That we weren't stressed about it, that we didn't really care if it happened or not, that if it was thrown our way, we would figure it out. And so I had been on birth control since I was like 16 for really severe cramps, anemia, passing out, all of the things, right? What I didn't know at the time was severe endometriosis. Mm-hmm. And so I had been on birth control for about a decade when we had been trying to get pregnant. Well, I say trying, it was in the sense of we're trying, but not trying.
Yeah. Kind of hoping for the best.
Oh yeah. Just, if it happens, we'll just deal with it. So I went off of birth control shortly before we got married, because I had heard, it's going to take a while to get out of your system. And, right. You have to get your cycle back regularly and all of those things. And my cycle came in full force. And I was reminded why I went on the pill in the first place, because I turned into a raging hormonal monster.
Mm-hmm. I can really relate to that, because I have the same situation going on here. It is not pretty.
It's not pretty. Coupled with, it was our first year of marriage, and I was a raging hormonal monster.
Right.
I was starting my own business and not profitable yet. We had just bought a house. We had just gotten married. Most of our relationship, we had lived long distance, like 4 hours apart from each other. And we had only moved in together and lived in the same vicinity for about 9 months before we bought a house and got married. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a lot of new stuff coupled with constant sobbing and stress and anger that I didn't know where it was coming from. And so for the longest, I really blamed that on just like, being married is hard. Being an adult is hard. And maybe we need counseling, and maybe we need therapy, and maybe we need all of these other things. And it wasn't until about a year and a half of that where I was like, okay, let's actually try and see if there's actually a problem, or if we're just missing the boat every time. So about that point is when I started learning about how does our cycle actually work, and how do hormones work, and what actually, when's your window of opportunity to get pregnant? And so I kind of took it upon myself at that time to just learn the science behind it all and track my cycles and take my temperature and do all of those things. Mm-hmm.
Which is not stuff you learn in school,
no, it's not.
We learn about all the ways to not get pregnant.
Yes.
And then we're at that stage where we want a baby and we go, how do we do this exactly? Because it's not working magically the way they said it would.
I felt like the dumbest person. Like, I don't know how to get pregnant,
Yeah.
And so I did the whole tracking and the feel your mucus, all the gross stuff, And we did that for probably another year. And I think at
you
that
guys
point,
spent quite a bit of time just kind of letting things go, trying what you could, really seeing whether it was working or not. So it took some time to get to a place where you're like, okay,
yeah,
something's up.
We didn't see a specialist until about almost 3 years into the process.
Which is a very common experience for a lot of couples.
Yeah. I think it was one of those things where we had talked about for a while of like, if it's not working on our own, then we'll just go straight to adoption. Like, we're not even going to ask anybody what the problem is. Clearly there's an issue, but we don't need to know what it is. And we're just going to move on. And I was okay with that for a while.
What made you guys think that? That's very interesting experience, because I think not a lot of couples think that far ahead. What made that become an option for the two of you?
It was more my partner than myself. And I think it was one of those things where it was like, we just need to have the conversation of, do we want to become parents or not? It's a yes or no. And if the answer is yes, then it doesn't matter how that happens. And this is just our opinion. So this is not judgment on anyone else. This is like literally become a parent how you want to become a parent. It's happened every single way in my family. We did not feel like we needed to seek a reason why we were broken. We didn't need to put our thumb down on this is why we're broken and here's how we can fix that. We didn't feel like we needed to go through all of these loops to make it happen biologically. At the end of the day, we just wanted to become parents.
That makes a lot of sense. And I like how you said that if you focus on the end goal, do you want to have children or not? Which is the exact thing that my husband and I talked to when we found out this is what it was going to take. That was the first question. Do you actually want to have children or a child? Let's start with one and see how it goes.
Right. Let's just do one.
And really, if the answer is yes, then the how will become available to you as you figure out what your options are. But you've got to start with that strong feeling of yes or no, instead of having those thoughts and the pressures from everyone around you. Well, I'm supposed to have children, right? I don't know. Be super clear on that. Even if you think you're clear, be super clear about it.
Yes.
I love that.
And so we had that conversation and we both said yes. And so because at that point, no matter which route you're going to take, it's going to be expensive and it's going to be timely and it's going to be emotional. And so no matter which route you take, you're signing up for all three of those things.
Yes.
The other option is, do we go buy a beach house? Do we travel? Do we do all of these other things? And do we feel like we're going to be missing out? And so we said, yes, we want to we want to be a parent. And as soon as we said yes, we said, okay, let's just start investigating all of our options. Let's not just pick one route. Let's see which one is going to resonate with us. And when I say all, I mean, we literally investigated all of them. So we set up an appointment with DHS. I set up coffee dates with multiple moms that I knew who adopted through various ways. We signed up or started the paperwork to do fostering. We made an appointment with a fertility specialist, and my cousins at the time were wrapping up an adoption through a private agency. So we made an appointment with them. So 5 different routes, all in the get-go.
And for those of you that are listening, if that sounds like, oh my God, I can't even do one of those, how did she do 5? I think it's really important to share here too, that you've got to be super clear about what you're open to. And it goes back to this idea that there's no judgment here.
Right.
But Emylee and her partner knew that, hey, adoption is on the table. So let's consider it. For somebody like my husband and I, adoption was on the table, but it was lower on the list. Yeah. And so for us, the right step for us was to go see a fertility specialist and do that first and do just that. And so I think it comes back to being super, super clear about what do you want and what do you want to get out of this? Yeah.
So our first appointment was with DHS, and there are 2 routes you can take within the system, and it's foster to adopt, or I guess there are 3. There are fostering with no plans of adoption, foster to adopt, and then there are just straight up adoptions. You don't even have to do fostering. So at that point of 3 years of not getting pregnant, and I think at that point 12 negative pregnancy test. Mm-hmm. Because with endo, you don't have regular cycles. And with endo, your body sometimes thinks that it's pregnant and it's not. And
Isn't that awful?
It's the worst.
I hate that. I know.
And so you get a lot of the pre-symptoms of early pregnancy and a late period, but you're not actually pregnant. And so there were a lot of negative pregnancy tests that led up to us meeting with DHS and doing that. So I was very emotional at the time.
I was going to ask you, like, where was your head at these meetings? I mean, was there a part of you that was still grieving the fact that you can't get pregnant? Were you hoping that you could have like this miracle pregnancy? I mean, where was your head at with this?
I think I was still naive in the sense of like, we're just not timing it right. I could be pregnant next month.
Okay.
I think I was still very foolish in what was actually going on in my body. And when in turn, in a couple of months, we would learn a lot more about what was wrong, which actually ended up being super helpful. I thought we didn't want to know what was actually wrong, but it turns out after a very awful meeting at DHS where we sat down in this informational meeting that's required for everyone who's wanting to start the process. It's free, by the way, to adopt through DHS. That was one of the reasons why we started that process, because we were like, well, if everything else is tens of thousands of dollars, this is one option that's literally $0. So let's explore that one first. And I think we just had a caseworker who had a bad day. And they're overworked and they're underpaid. So I get it. We did the meeting and it was basically this giant scare tactic to me of scaring you away from adopting through the system because you're going to get crap kids is basically what she said.
Oh, that's awful.
We had written on our paperwork because they ask you about what age would you want. And we said newborn at the time because it was going to be our first. And like, that's what I want. I want a baby, right? And I want to be there from the beginning. And we had our hearts open for, okay, if we can just become a parent first, like we might adopt or foster later down the road. And at that point, the age is irrelevant. But right now, I want to be a mom to a newborn. And so we put that on our paperwork and she called us out in front of everyone, which is an introvert. That is the worst case scenario that could ever happen in my entire life. And said to us, if you're being unrealistic by putting a newborn down on your sheet because you're never going to get the call. And when you do, your baby will grow up to be in a wheelchair.
What? That's what she said to you?
She said that. Those are her words.
I mean, I'm all for like tempering expectations.
Right.
But holy cow, what?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, man.
So we walked out. I couldn't even get out of the door without sobbing. So we're in the car and I'm just like, this is it. Like we have no options. All of this is just going to be an uphill battle. We don't even know what's wrong with us. Like all of the things were just coming crashing down basically. And I think it was at that moment where I was like, oh, crap, I really want to do this. I just don't kind of want to do this. I really want to do this. And that was kind of a slap in the face yet again. And so now I'm like, okay, we need to figure out something we need to actually have a plan.
Isn't that so interesting how that works? Where when you see how hard it's going to be and then it could be taken away from you, when that reality of, oh my gosh, we might not have our first child or our second or our fifth or whatever it is for you, you might not have that. You see that and it feels very real in your reach. And all of a sudden it becomes very clear. You know what? I actually really do want this. Or you know what? I don't think I wanted this that badly at all. But that clarity really comes right in those moments.
Yep. And so after that, I made the appointment with the specialist and I said, let's just go figure out what the issue is. Like, I knew it was my endo. I said, I know it's me, but let's like on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it kind of thing.
Right.
So we got all of the blood work. He got all of the blood work. We did all of the things that are super awkward and uncomfortable when you go to those people. And they called us back into their office and they said, so you guys together have less than a 1% chance of conceiving naturally ever.
Oh my gosh.
They said IVF has a failure rate of, I think they said like 95% or something ridiculous. you guys doing IVF, your failure rate is a 98%. My endo had cysts all up in my body, but my partner also had issues, which we obviously had no clue about. There was like mobility issues and quantity issues and all of that stuff. And so we both came to the table like basically not able to conceive at all, which was super interesting and a very odd conversation afterwards. Because I was ready to take, quote, the blame, right? I'm the reason why this isn't happening. I know that. I have problems going into it, but I don't think we were expecting both of us to be like equal fault.
Sure.
So we left there and we said, okay, IVF is most likely going to fail. That's not us being negative about it. That's being statistical about it.
Mm-hmm. Basically,
and it's expensive.
Healing and going through and whatever the test results showed, the odds were really, really stacked against you.
Yes, because not only I had a fallopian tube blocked because of cyst, but I also so I went in to the specialist when I was 25 or 26. And she said I had the egg count of a 42-year-old woman. And so I basically had no eggs. I had like 6, And so she's like, typically during IVF, we like to pull about 11 to 15 eggs, knowing that about half of those are going to die, knowing that a couple of those are going to take, and maybe 2 to 3 of them are going to be viable to implant and to hope that you get pregnant on one of them.
Right.
And she said, I would be surprised, even after all the rounds of hormones, if we get 5 good eggs out of you to begin with. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting here like, okay, I'm going to inject myself with all of this stuff that's going to make me even more of a raging person than I already am. I have always dealt with depression and anxiety my entire life. So why would I want to increase that if I don't have to?
Sure.
And so
that's a really smart way to think about it, I think, because you're really looking at your whole body and you're not just, I know personally, having gone through this and all the women I've worked with too, when you're going through this time and you're so laser focused on, I want the baby, that you can forget all of these things. Like, what is it going to do to my body to do that? Yeah. What is it going to do to my mental health to do that? So I think that's amazing that you were able to put yourself in that place before you committed to the hormones and started injecting yourself and then going, oh, why did I do this? This was a bad idea.
Yeah, what am I doing? Yeah. Well, and we had just watched, I think it had been a year prior, about a year and a half prior, but the cousins I was talking about who had just finished up their adoption through a private agency, before that, they had had a failed IVF. Mm-hmm. It didn't take. She was not pregnant. And it killed them.
It's devastating.
Hurts. It's devastating.
Yeah.
It was just so bad. And I didn't want to put that on our marriage, and I didn't want to put that on ourselves. And so I think it probably took another week or two of like talking about it with friends and family about the conversation and just working it out to fully like put the brochures away, put the results away, file it, and move on to the next.
Do you mind if I ask, did you guys consider donor eggs, donor sperm, or donor embryos at that point?
I think we did, in the sense of where it's like, is that, I don't honestly know if I knew that was a total thing at that point. So at that point, we did not make the follow-up with the specialist. They said, we want you to come back and we want you to like talk about your options and we will like go over everything with you and whatever. And I just could not set foot in that office again. Sure.
I mean, after news like that, I don't blame them at all. It's like they've completely shut the door in your face.
Oh yeah.
And then they'll come back and talk to me. There might still be some options here.
Right. And so I think at that point it was like, I know adoption's going to be hard, and I know that there are no's that can happen, and I know that there are things that can come up with that. But ultimately at the end of the day, like, you're going to get a child. Like, whether it's your first or your 18th option, like, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
The other way, there's just absolutely no promise of an end result. And we were the first in our family to bring a grandchild into the family. I was the first in our group of friends. So I think at that point, there was just no one I felt comfortable going down that route for us, because like they hadn't even had a family yet, and they hadn't even had the discussions. And so it was just one of those, like, I kind of felt isolated and we need to just figure out something on our own.
Okay.
So at that point, it was, okay, let's find somehow to do adoption. DHS is not going to work. There are private agencies and there are non-for-profit agencies. And I was adamantly against a private agency from day one because I felt like it was buying a baby. That's how I felt the process was. It's so expensive. You get shopped out of a book, literally, and anything could happen at any time. And it just felt super, super risky and expensive and wrong. Spoiler alert, we ended up going through a private agency. So obviously those things change. But we lived in Oklahoma at the time, which is in the Bible Belt. And when you go through a non-for-profit agency in Oklahoma, every single one of them are backed by some religious organization, typically some sort of Christian church. And not to get into religion at all or any rights or wrongs, we are not religious whatsoever. And so going through a non-for-profit agency was not even an option for us because we did not meet their criteria. Some of that criteria being that I would agree to stay home and not work before the child was school aged. Criteria that we be married for a certain amount of years that we had not been at that point, even though we had been married for 4 years and together for almost a decade, and that they don't adopt out to same-sex couples, which is not us, but is a lot of our friends and family. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't feel...
The values didn't match.
Right. So it literally just wasn't going to work. We couldn't lie our way into making that work, even though it was considerably cheaper. So by living in Oklahoma, by being in that time, by having the options that were presented to us, a private agency was all that was left, or word of mouth. So meaning you just tell everyone that you're looking for a baby and they hopefully tell everyone and you maybe get a call.
Yeah.
Which is exactly actually what started us to kind of push it along even faster. So we were telling everyone we were going to adopt, and we were telling everyone that we wanted a baby. And if they knew of anyone, send them our way. And so a family friend, they adopted out of New York about 10 years prior. And someone in that family circle was placing, and they were looking for someone. And so
that's the power of, can we just talk about that for a second? The power of telling people about your journey and what kind of doors open for you, because I know there's so much secrecy otherwise. We totally fell victim to that. I wouldn't even say victim. That's not even the right thing. We chose that. We said, we're not telling anyone because we don't want to deal with the comments that people are going to make with the choices that we're making. And looking back, that is one of the things I wished we hadn't done, because look at what opportunities become available to you when people know what you're up to.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
So we got the call that there was potentially a baby in New York. The situation was she was born. So she had already been born. She was a couple days old at the time. And the birth mom had passed away during labor. Oh. The saddest, devastating.
Right.
And so we called our lawyer, and she said, you need to get a home study ASAP. You cannot bring back a baby or do anything without a home study. Here's a lawyer in New York you can reach out to. Here's who this person I recommend. So we had our home study complete in a weekend. But the paperwork outside of that is you need to get your fingerprints on file with the FBI. You have to get a background check. You have to go do all of these other ridiculous things that take weeks and months to get taken care of.
Right.
So what we were going to do was kind of be in limbo. And we were like, okay, well, we can fly out to New York. We can get the home study approved. We can at least get one of the background checks done. And we can just stay in New York until we get legal. And I was about to click purchase on a plane ticket. And we got the call from our lawyer representing us in New York that said they're actually going to send the baby with a blood relative in California.
Oh,
so
I am having tears in my eyes hearing this on your behalf.
It's
gut-wrenching.
It's gut-wrenching. All throughout the entire process of hearing, because that was not the last time we heard something like that.
Yeah.
It's this very odd feeling of happy for them and devastated for yourself.
Yeah.
You can't be mad that this baby's going to go to a blood relative.
Right.
What kind of person would you be? But you are, but you're really angry.
Yeah. Because in your mind, that becomes your baby. And you start bonding. Even though you're not physically there, that becomes your baby.
Yes. So after that, I said, okay, let's kind of put a hold on, word of mouth kind of conversations of babies that are born right now. Let's put a hold on that until we get legal, until we get all of our stuff, until we're actually ready to be like, nope, this is ours. We can make it happen. And so I think I thought naively for a while that, okay, well, that word of mouth came within like a week of us telling people we were looking. Like, we're going to get another call by someone we know, like any day now.
Sure.
And it just didn't happen. And it still hasn't happened because technically we're always looking,
Right.
You have to always be looking if you want to expand your family through adoption.
Right.
And that was our only call to this day from someone we knew who knew someone who knew someone kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we started the process with a private agency and put our deposit down, made our book, made our specifications. We were specific in that we wanted a newborn, which private agencies typically only work with newborns, but we were race and gender neutral. So we did not care.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, we got a lot of calls. We were the only, Oklahoma again, we were the only race neutral couple for over a year at the entire agency.
Wow, you're kidding.
No, I wish I was.
That's really eye-opening for me. I mean, not living anywhere near that or having even visited that area of the country.
Right?
That's very eye-opening for me. I didn't realize that.
And so that meant we got a lot of calls. But what happens when you work with an agency is that they will literally call you when it's even a maybe inkling 2% chance that you might take this baby because they have to be prepared.
Yeah.
And they have to have a backup to their backup to their backup. And so we got the call for what I call maybe babies. We got that call 9 times.
Oh my gosh.
Before actual, sure, this is your baby.
Do they give you information about that baby, or do they just say, hey, we have somebody who might? I mean, I'm curious in terms of how connected you get then to this maybe baby.
They all varied. Some were, there's a baby just born. It's at this hospital. Could you have a go bag and be there if it's yours? And you hear nothing, but maybe it's a boy or a girl. There are some, there was one sweet, sweet baby. I was growing my photography business at the time and I was expanding into newborns. And my aunt actually did some kind of side work for a different agency. And when there are newborns that don't have anywhere to go because there are no one to take them if they're not white, they oftentimes go home with the people who volunteer for the agency. And they need pictures. Yeah, they need pictures taken of them to be put on their website so people can find them and shop for them, in lack of a better word, and see them and connect with them and want to adopt with them. So there was a baby who was like, 4 or 5 days old. And my aunt had her at her house. And she said, can you come practice your skills and take pictures of this baby? And he was the squishiest little baby I've ever seen. And I took pictures of him and I said, we'll take him. Like, we're ready. And so we were his backup, but he had a sibling who had been placed a couple years prior, and they were waiting on getting a hold of those parents who adopted the first child, and they get first dibs, basically, on the
makes
siblings.
sense.
Which makes sense. And so I held him and I took his pictures and I snuggled him all day. And he eventually went to live with his sibling and his adoptive parents, his parents now. And that's the best, like that is the best case scenario ever.
Sure.
But that's the closest I ever got to seeing and bonding with a baby before we found out that it wasn't ours.
Okay. That's still really challenging. And I think what comes to mind when I hear this is a lot of people, I know I heard this personally, I know a lot of people who have heard this too, is when it's difficult to get pregnant, people often say, well, just adopt. As if there's a store to go to and pick out.
If there's a store.
Right?
Yeah.
Like and hearing this story is so powerful for me too, to really help people understand there is no such thing as quote unquote just adopt.
No.
It is such a mind, body, soul trip. It is heartbreaking and it is just, it changes you because it is so freaking hard.
Yes. You have to be in it, like for all of the calls. So we're still living in Tulsa at the time. We actually decided, and we've been talking about forever, of moving back to Kansas City. And that all happened super quickly. My husband applied for a job on a Thursday, got accepted on Friday. We listed our house on Sunday. It sold on Tuesday, and he was in Kansas City within a week and a half. I stayed for the remainder of 30 days, packed up our entire first house, where I did not get to bring home a baby to, our 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. That was empty, and I sobbed, and it was, that was a thing. I loved that house. And we moved to Kansas City, and we were staying in a basement of an aunt. And 2 weeks after I moved to Kansas City, we got the call from what would now be our daughter.
I have chills. Oh, I have chills.
Our birth mom at first didn't want to pick for herself. So she told the agency, you pick. I trust your pick. Just pick. I don't want to be a part of it.
Sure.
Since we were the only race neutral couple at the time, we were the only option. So the agency picked us, called us and said, I picked you, but hold tight because there's some Native American blood here. And in Oklahoma, there's a lot of Native American blood, and you have to get a letter from the tribe basically saying that the tribe will not claim that child as their own if anything were to come up.
Oh,
because
wow.
If you adopt a child of Native American blood and that tribe comes back, regardless of whether you're an amazing parent or not, they absolutely have precedence and can take your child.
Oh, no matter when they do that in the 18 years
Correct.
that you have the child.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. So as an agency, they like to cover their bases like all of the time. And so we got the call. Yes, this might be yours, but let's wait. It took a month to get that letter back from the tribe. But the tribe said, nope, we're good. It's all yours. So there we're like, okay, are we good? Then birth mom decided she wanted to meet us, which is a fantastic sign in the adoption world. As soon as you start to be able to build a relationship with birth mom, like you're in. As we all know, as soon as you meet and make a connection with someone, it's harder to change your mind, really. It's harder to take that away from someone. And so we were all over that. We drove 5 hours to have a 45-minute lunch. And she was 18 weeks at the time, and she was showing, and she let me touch her belly and ask her all the questions. And she's such an amazing human being. It was such a wonderful, awkward, uncomfortable, everything, every adjective I could put in there. It was such an amazing time. About a week later,
did it feel like the baby was yours at that moment?
No, no, not at all. But what we say up until the end time, which was 7 days after our daughter was born. So not even on the day she was born, I did not feel like she was mine.
Is that because you were bracing yourself from all the heartbreak you've had before? Or is that
It was because literally she could have changed her mind at any time. Up until 7 days after our daughter was born, when she officially signed over rights, she could have changed her mind.
Okay.
So we were tentatively ecstatic from July to 7 days after January 4th.
Okay.
But a week after we met her in person, she mailed us sonogram pictures.
Oh, wow.
We got updates from the agency that she was doing well. We sent her a Christmas present. We sent her a card. But we didn't see her again until the day of her scheduled C-section on January 4th. So in between then, it was a lot of, do we have a shower? Do we not have a shower? Do we paint the room? Do we not paint the room? And we made little decisions here and there. We painted the room, but we didn't put together the crib.
You find your line.
Right. We bought the car seat, but we didn't take it out of the box.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. But then January 4th came, and we were allowed to be at the hospital. She was having a C-section, so we could not be in the room.
Okay.
But I was the first person to hold our daughter. The nurses at that hospital were the most amazing team I've ever met in my life. We are a little bit hippie-ish and weird. So I was like the adoptive mom that stripped off her shirt in the middle of the nursery to do skin to skin.
Oh, I would totally be all over that. That would be me too.
Yeah. I asked them to not bathe her. We had donor breast milk. We did the whole thing. They gave us our own room. I was sitting in the hospital bed, just like a mom that had given birth. Our family got to come in. We had flowers. We had balloons. It was everything. It was literally everything I could have ever dreamed of.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That is amazing. And tell us about her now. She just turned 1, right? What's she like?
She just turned 1. She is the most amazing human being I've ever met in my entire life. She is hilarious. She has the muscle strength of the Hulk. She has dance parties even when she hears the doorbell. Like, she breaks out in a dance. She awesome. Has the biggest afro that anyone has ever seen on a 1-year-old. She's amazing.
That's incredible. She's awesome. And she's a crazy, crazy cute. So adorable.
She is adorable and a genius. And I mean, we could not have lucked out any harder.
I love it. I love it. And I know that having the baby, bringing the baby home is just one part of the journey. And there's so much more that I wish we could get into right now. But
this is already way over.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so amazing to hear the story and the realities of what it's like to actually adopt a child, to know, starting from deciding that that's how you want to grow your family, whether it's for your first child or your second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever, to actually what it takes to do that. Because I think there's so much misinformation out there about what it actually means to adopt a baby.
And financially, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
Totally, totally. So for those of our listeners who are, with us and just like, okay, I'm considering this, or I want to look into this more. If you could think back on your journey, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 things that you want our listeners to know when it comes to considering adoption as an option to grow their family?
My biggest piece of advice is you absolutely have to be 100% your most unapologetic advocate. No one is going to ask the questions but you. There is no manual. This is the one thing you cannot Google all of the answers to. Every rule, law, and stipulation is different no matter where you are. The cost is different. The process is different. And no one is going to tell you those things unless you ask for them. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was stepping on toes. I felt like I was asking very inappropriate, awkward questions because you're asking about the process of getting someone else's baby as your own. That's very awkward. And it is not normal, right? It doesn't feel right. It feels very weird, but you have to stand up for yourself and be your own advocate because no one else will. My second piece of advice is find one person. And if you're listening to this, you know someone, because it's me, that has done it before, and reach out to them and ask them every inappropriate question you could have ever thought to ask, because they will tell you. And you have to find someone who's gone through the process before. And if you can take them to coffee, if you can hop on the phone, if you can do whatever, that's going to be like your most insider information that you could get, because every website is outdated. Every book out there is old. Yeah. It can only come from the mouth of someone who's done it recently.
Who's really lived it. Yes, absolutely. So you want to advocate for yourself, ask the uncomfortable questions, and reach out to somebody who's lived it and ask everything. So really, everything. I mean, the big takeaway is do not be shy in talking about what you're wondering. Ask your questions.
And especially if you're adopting after you've had a child, you know this a little bit. But if you're already a parent, you know that feeling of like you would do anything for your kid, and like that boundary goes away and you don't care what you say. You have to channel that while you're in the adoption process.
That's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I love that. So for those of you that are listening, growing your family when you know it's going to be challenging comes with so many emotions. But what I want you to take away from this episode is that you always have choices when it comes to growing your family. The path you're on may not be the one you thought you'd be on, but it can still lead you to the family of your dreams. It's still possible. Emylee, what are your final words of hope for women and couples who are considering adoption right now?
Everyone said this to me and I did not believe them. All of it is worth it when you're on the other side. I would do it 10 times over, and even making it 10 times harder and 10 times more expensive for what we ended up getting. And you may not see that now, and your pocketbook may not see that now, and your emotions may not see that now. but everyone is the cheesy, like, as soon as you see that baby. And it might not happen as soon as you see that baby because there are different laws in different states on how long that changing mind process can be. But as soon as you're there, as soon as you're at that moment is when it's all going to be clear that you would absolutely 100% do it over no matter what.
Oh, wow. That was like such a breath of fresh air just now. Just wow. It'll be okay and it'll be worth it. It will be worth it. Where can people find you if they want to know more about your journey, if they want to reach out and ask those awkward questions that need to be asked? Where can they find you?
So I'm hanging out mostly on Instagram at Emylee Says. You can DM me. You can comment on a post. I share a bunch of pictures of my daughter on there and of my business and painting. You can reach out on Facebook. You can reach out at hey@emyleesays.com or just emyleesays.com using the contact form. Seriously, do not be shy. Ask me anything. I've hopped on many virtual coffee dates with women across the country and answered these same questions about their own journeys.
Love it. Love it. And all these links are going to be in the show notes. So you have easy access to Emylee for whatever you need and whatever questions you have on your mind. Thank you so much, Emylee. This was incredible. And thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. It really, I have no words. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I could talk about it for another 3 hours.
I could too. So we might have to have you back. Oh my gosh. I'm speechless right now and I'm on the brink of tears because I feel for her and I feel for all of you that are on this journey that we're all on together with how hard it is to just want that baby and not know where it's coming from or how it's coming or when it's coming. And yet feeling in your heart that you have space in your heart for this little being that's out there somewhere, whether it's through fertility treatment or adoption or surrogacy or some other avenue. But the ultimate truth really is that no matter how hard it feels, how impossible it feels someday when you just want to scream and yell at life or the universe going, what is wrong with you? What did I do to deserve this? The ultimate truth is that you always have choices when it comes to growing your family. The path you're on may not be the one you thought it would be, or the one that you thought you would be on, or the one you wanted to be on. But it can still lead you to the family of your dreams. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love it if you can head over to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review so more women who are going through infertility and fertility treatment and trying to figure out how to grow their family can tune into Delivering Miracles to receive inspiration and hope and tips on how to get through this family building journey so they can have the family of their dreams. And if you're going through fertility treatment right now, or you're debating about changing up the game plan on how to grow your family, I'd be happy to guide you. So reach out to me at parijatdeshpande.com/contact, or you can go to parijatdeshpande.com/fertility, and we can schedule a session to talk about how I can support you through your fertility treatment to help you make the right decisions for yourself, to help you bring your stress and anxiety down so you can be on the path to bringing your baby home. And I'd love to stay in touch. So follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Parijat Desh. That's PARIJATDESH. There are some days you're going to wonder how you're ever going to get through it. There are some days when you're going to question everything you did, everything you're doing, wondering why this is happening and if it's ever going to look the way that you wanted, or if you're ever going to have the family you've been dreaming of. I hope that this episode has shown you that you are not alone on that path. Not now, not ever. So many of us have walked it, are still walking it, and are here for you. Take it one day, one step at a time. You can do this.